you have this really interesting framework, and I think it was the keeper test that managers use at Netflix. And I guess this would fall into the talent density bucket of it. But can you go over what that question is? Because I think a lot of leaders out there, this is an important question for them to ask of their teams. But I also think it's important if you're not a leader to get into the mindset of how your leader would answer this question about you.
Yeah. So this is quite provocative. It goes along with the adequate performance gets a generous severance. But basically the deal is that if your goal is to create a high performing team, then you can't let kind of middle performers hang around, right? Because if you do, it just tells your high performers that you're not really serious about creating that kind of top work environment. And of course, you can't give that level of freedom to your employees if you don't have top people on the team. So the keeper test is a simple mechanism that you or I or any manager can use, and that's that you maybe every 6 months or every 12 months, as a manager, you ask yourself a question. You imagine that each person on your team is coming to meet with you. So here comes Stan, for example, and Stan comes into your office and Stan says, boss, I'm sorry, I have to tell you, I'm leaving the company. Right? I have another job somewhere else. And the question that you ask yourself is, how will you feel when Stan tells you that he's leaving? Will you be devastated? Will you say, oh my gosh, Stan, don't leave me? Right? Anything. Will you fight hard to keep Stan? And if you'll fight hard to keep him, that's clear. He's the right person for that team. Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe would you feel a little bit relieved thinking about the fact that now you could focus your attention on your high performers and stop wasting so much time on one individual? And if so, well, it's really clear that you need to make a tough decision.
Yep.
So that's the keeper test. You do that about each of your employees. And they also do something that at Netflix that I think is kind of crazy, but also is quite interesting, which is you might do a keeper test prompt, which is that you might go to your boss, like if you're my boss, Jacob, and I might say, Jacob, I just really want to know, if I told you I were leaving the company, would you fight to keep me? Right? And then you'll know, right? You'll know if you are the best person for that Olympic team or not.
That's a tough question to go ask your leader, because if they say no, you're probably going to be... I could see there too, some people would be motivated to be like, oh no, okay, but I better try harder. And other people are just going to be like totally crushed and just, oh my God, hanging their head down, I shouldn't be here. And yeah, it's a tough question to ask.
That's right. And I did interview, a lot of employees who did ask those questions, and I can tell you they didn't sleep very well the night before, right? Yeah. Because you're thinking, oh my gosh, what's my boss going to say? But I had one person who said, no matter what, the outcome is positive. Because if your boss says to you, of course, Jacob, of course I would fight to keep you, well, then you have nothing to be worried about. Yep. And if your boss says, I think so, but I also had a couple of doubts, and then he tells you those doubts, well, that's great that you know now, right? And if your boss says, you know what, I got to tell you honestly, I wouldn't fight to keep you. It's also, I think, really important that we have that information. Well, what can I do to improve then? Or maybe I'm not in the right role. Maybe we can find a better job where it's a better fit, right? So it really encourages, I think, those courageous conversations that so seldomly happen in organizations.